Location: Chunky's Bar, Indonesia. The clone has been residing in a small beach town on the island of Indonesia, working as a barman. The clone now goes by the name of Ben Riley. He has grown his beard out and shaved his hair to try and break his resemblance to Peter Parker. Ben is depressed. Leading this fake life is breaking his soul. With every passing day, the part of him that is Peter Parker grows stronger and stronger. He feels as if he is even experiencing Peter's emotions. Ben feels a strong passion for MJ and a deep sense of care and respect for Aunt May. He can't understand why he feels this way. He also feels himself being called back to the city, and more importantly, called back to the crime-fighting life of a vigilante. His internal monologues rattle around inside his brain from the moment he wakes up, and when he goes to sleep, his dreams become plagued with the visions of a life he'll never know, a life he'll never get to experience unless. Location: Peter's new apartment. Peter has moved out of Aunt May's place and into his own apartment in the city. Something is happening to him that he does not understand. Keeping his distance from Aunt May was a decision to keep her from worrying about him. She always worries about him, but now he's worried too. The gash on Peter's back has started to turn black. Even the blood vessels in his skin have darkened. It's been a week since his final encounter with Mad Jack. When he saw the doctors after the battle, they stitched him up and gave him a couple of shots, but the stitches have ripped and the wound has blackened over the course of a few days. Peter plans to visit an old mentor of his, Dr. Connors. If anyone is going to know how to treat him, it's Connors. Peter has been experiencing a high temperature. Every morning he wakes up and his bedding is soaked with sweat from the night before. His appetite is through the roof. All he wants to do is eat red meat, and as much of it as possible. The bloodier the better. He's even had cravings to drink the blood left in the packaging after opening a pack of raw steaks. His concern is mounting by the day. He won't even go out in public. In 2 days' time, Dr. Connors will return from a work conference, and then he can get the help he needs. Peter is angsty and aggressive. He cannot get a grip on his mood. MJ is at the door with a container in her hands. Peter half opens the door, but he doesn't invite MJ inside. Peter: I told you I'm sick. MJ: I made you soup, and a hello would be nice. Peter grabs the soup from MJ and closes the door in her face. Peter: I don't want you to catch whatever it is that I've got. MJ: You're being ridiculous. Not even a thank you. MJ leaves. She's very hurt by Peter's lack of manners and gratitude. Location: Chunky's Bar, Indonesia. Ben is working the night shift at the bar, and a group of British tourists have been drinking way too much. There are 10 of them in total. 2 of them are playing at the bar's only pool table, while the other 8 cheer them on and commentate. The bar is small and there are only 2 staff members. The bar's only waitress is carrying a tray of 10 beers for the group's next round. One of the men stumbles into the waitress. He is a large man, and his weight completely knocks the waitress over and sends the beers flying into the air. Some of the men at the table get showered in beer, and the bottles shatter to pieces as they come crashing onto the concrete floor. One of the men who got soaked in beer grabs the waitress by the wrist and tells her that she better get them another round, and that they won't be paying for the beers that she threw on the floor. Ben watches silently from the bar. The waitress apologizes profusely and returns to the bar. She looks at Ben with a look of desperation, as if to say, "Help!" Ben tells her to stand behind the bar and not to replace the beers. Ben walks up to the group. The locals in the bar watch the scene unfold with tense anticipation. Ben: Right, gentlemen, thanks for supporting Chunky's this evening, but the bar's closed and I think you all ought to be heading home so we can clean up. The man who got soaked in beer stands right up in front of Ben. Man, How about you get us the beers we're owed before I rearrange your teeth? Ben answers confidently, without hesitation. Ben, you've had enough. It's time for you all to leave. The man swings his meaty fist at Ben's face, but Ben catches it easily in the palm of his hand and breaks the man's wrist, as if he was snapping chopsticks apart. Ben jabs the man in his throat, and he falls to the ground gasping for air. The remaining 9 men get to their feet and prepare to attack Ben, while the locals in the bar get as far away as they can from the conflict. One of the men snaps the pool cue in half to use as a weapon, and another picks up a bar stool. Ben assesses the threats. Time seems to slow down for him. He can see the attackers coming and react far quicker than them. The man with the bar stool swings it at Ben, and he ducks under it before shattering the man's kneecap with a hard, low kick. Ben similarly avoids the man with the snapped pool cue who tries to whack him. Ben disarms one of the pool cues from the man and then thrashes him on the back of the head, knocking him out. The rest of the men are less eager to attack after watching their buddies get beaten up with ease. Ben hasn't had enough though. Ben leaves the remaining men moaning on the ground in agony. He grabs some cash out of one of the men's wallets and gives it to the waitress for her tip. Ben, sorry for the trouble. Ben turns back to the tourists. Ben, I'll only say this once more. Get out of here. Those who can still walk, carry the others. You've got 2 minutes. The men leave the bar in a hurry, slipping on the wet floor as they hobble to the exit. Ben turns back to the waitress and tells her that it's been great working with her, but he must move on. Ben leaves his apron behind and leaves the bar. Location: Dr. Connor's laboratory. Dr. Connors is assessing Peter's wound on his back. He is taking samples with a scalpel and studying them in a petri dish under a microscope. Dr. Connors is concerned by his findings, but he says nothing. Connors takes the sample and puts it into a test tube and tells Peter he'll need to keep a sample to study further before he can provide any feedback. Peter tries to push Connors for answers, but Connors is hesitant. Dr. Connors: I don't know how to explain this, but from what I can gather so far, your DNA is rewriting itself as we speak. Peter: How is that possible? Dr. Connors: Whatever Beck infected you with must have been a highly advanced Alchemax biochemical toxin. The ability to unravel and replace existing DNA in a live organism is unprecedented. I'll need to study it further before I can even consider developing a cure. You'll have to hang tight. Peter: I'm not sure how much longer I have, Doc. Dr. Connors: I'll do everything I can, I promise. Just lay low for a while. Location: Peter's apartment. Peter wakes up in pain that night and goes to the mirror to look at his wound. Out of his back, he sees 6 small spider-like legs breaking out from the gash in his back. Peter: This must be a dream. Peter splashes water on his face and slaps himself in an attempt to wake himself from the nightmare he thinks he is having. He realizes that this is real and that he is fully awake. Location: MJ's house. Peter's walking up to MJ's house. He feels bad about the other night and he wants to open up to her about his situation. He just doesn't know how. He has a big jacket on to hide the bulge caused by the spider legs protruding from his back. Ben Riley has just arrived in Manhattan, and they bump into one another on the street right outside MJ's doorstep. Ben has shaved his beard and is looking a lot more like Peter, almost identical. Peter looks far less himself than usual. He has dark black rings under his eyes and he is sweating bullets. Peter: You. Ben: Peter: It's good to see you again. Peter grabs Ben by the collar and pulls him close. Peter: I know what you did with MJ while I was away. You think I wouldn't find out? Ben: I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I am you, Peter. You are nothing like me. You're a cheap copy at most. I should have finished you off while I had the chance. Ben: Something is wrong with you, Peter. You need to leave now, Ben. I need to tell MJ that I'm sorry for not being honest. Peter loses his temper, and in that moment, his spider legs rip through his shirt and jacket. His eyes swell in his head, and his veins fill with a dark black fluid. Ben staggers back in horror at the sight unfolding before him. Peter chases after Ben and they scale the wall on the building next to MJ's apartment. On the rooftop, Peter continues to chase after Ben in a frenzied rage. Peter runs on all 8 of his legs, more creature than human. Peter catches up to Ben and pounces on him, pinning him down with his sharp spider legs. Peter snarls in Ben's face. Peter, disappear and never come back. Peter releases Ben and Ben runs away. Peter knows he can't see MJ looking the way he does, and so he returns to the safety of his apartment. Location, Dr. Connor Laboratory. Dr. Connors is trying to develop a cure for Peter. Using rats as test subjects, he watches as the virus from Peter's DNA turns the rats into aggressive, monstrous versions of themselves. Dr. Connors administers the prototype of his antidote to the rats and sits back to watch if it works. Location, Peter's apartment. Peter has now fully transformed into the man-spider. His apartment is covered in a network of webs, and he hangs upside down from the ceiling. Miles Morales has come to visit Peter and knocks on his door. From the building across the street, Ben has been spying on Peter to find out more about his condition. Miles, Peter, are you there? Ben jumps across the street to Peter's building to protect Miles from the monster hiding behind the door. The door opens and Miles sees that the apartment is covered in webs. He takes a step inside, but the man-spider jumps towards Miles and pins him to the ground. The man-spider shows his fangs and goes to bite Miles in the neck. Ben jumps through the window and tackles the man-spider off of Miles. The man-spider and Ben engage in a tussle, while Miles makes a run for it. The man-spider throws Ben off and chases after Miles. Ben shoots one of his symbiote webs at the man-spider and stops him from biting Miles on the staircase. The man-spider turns around and directs its aggression towards Ben. The man-spider rips Ben's flesh apart with its razor-sharp legs. Ben holds the man-spider's fangs back from tearing into his skin. Ben kicks the man-spider off of himself and jumps back out of the window. On the street, Ben collects Miles and swings him to safety. Miles is confused and believes Ben to be the real Peter Parker. Miles, Peter, you look different. What the hell is that thing in your apartment? Ben, I'm still trying to figure that out, but don't go back there. It's not safe for you. Peter returns to his apartment and turns back into his semi-human form. He doesn't know what has happened. The virus is slowly taking control of him entirely. Every time he turns into the man-spider, he fully loses consciousness, like waking up from a nightmare. Location, Dr. Connor Laboratory. Back in Dr. Connor's lab, the rats have healed entirely. Connors extracts the antidote. He is confident he's found the cure. He calls Peter and tells him to come and see him immediately. Ben stalks Peter as he makes his way to Dr. Connor's lab. Peter enters the lab and Ben watches as Dr. Connors explains the antidote to Peter. Ben can't hear what Connors is explaining and gets the wrong impression. He believes Connors is the one assisting in Peter's transformation into the man-spider. Miles Morales, out of pure intrigue and concern, has also followed Ben to find out more about the situation. Inside the lab, Peter, my condition has worsened. It takes over from time to time, and I black out completely. I'm losing control. Dr. Connors, I found a way to reverse engineer the virus. Peter, do it now. As Dr. Connors is about to administer the antidote, Ben breaks into the lab. Ben, I have to stop this. It's gone too far. Peter is triggered by Ben's presence and immediately turns into the man-spider. The man-spider attacks Ben, but Ben fights back using all of his power and skill to combat the man-spider's rage. Miles runs into the lab in an attempt to help and distracts the man-spider from attacking Ben, thinking that Ben is the real Peter Parker. The man-spider launches at Miles, but before it can harm him, Dr. Connors transforms into the lizard and gets in between Miles and the man-spider. The lizard tries to break up the fight between the man-spider and Ben, but is stabbed through the abdomen by one of the man-spider's legs in the process and dies. Ben knocks over some of Connors' chemicals, causing a fire in the laboratory. The man-spider tries to bite Ben, but Ben shoots his symbiote web at the man-spider and webs him down to the ground. Ben grabs Miles and rushes him to safety once again. In the background, we see the lab erupting into flames, with the man-spider trapped inside. Ben, you gotta stop this kid. You're gonna get yourself killed. Miles, I'm sorry, I just wanted to help. Back in the lab, we see the man-spider being pulled from the flames. We see someone's hand administering the antidote, and within seconds, Peter returns to his normal self. Peter looks up at the person who has just injected the antidote into him. It is Kraven the Hunter.